Okay, so we are going to get started with Gonzo-style journalism and then talk a little bit about alt copy. And I want to preface this lesson by saying that some of the stuff in here might be a little hard to talk about. Um, so just kind of keep that in mind. And then the whole idea behind Gonzo style journalism, that the whole kind of objective I want you to get from all of this is that you need to be vulnerable in your writing. So just kind of keep that in mind as we move through this lesson. We kind of see all the different ways that we can see vulnerability in Gonzo style journalism. Okay, so here we go. So to begin with Gonzo-style journalism, you really have to figure out who started the whole thing. The guy who started this, his name was Hunter S. Thompson. You could call him an explicit journalist. He wrote for very famous publications. He got in a lot of different trouble. He was in jail as a teenager. He went to jail a couple different times for different things. He was in the Air Force. He moved around a lot. He was a freelancer. So a very kind of reckless, disregarding kind of person, right? So anyways, he wrote a lot of articles and books. He wrote about the Hells Angels gangs in LA. He wrote about the Kentucky Derby, which doesn't sound super crazy, but he had an interesting take on it. And then Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So the way that he went about writing all of this stuff is that he would immerse himself in these situations and experiences and things that were going on during that time of the world. He would put himself in those experiences. And then a little fun fact about him is that he wrote this article called The Rum Diary, and he was convinced by none other than Johnny Depp to publish that book after really deciding against it. And then Thompson passed away in 2005. And then in 2011, Depp actually played a character who depicted Thompson in the movie The Rum Diary. Depp was also in the movie adaptation of Fear and Loathing that came out in 1998. So before we jump into Gonzo-style journalism, because it is the complete opposite of what we are told to do as journalists, we have to keep in mind some of the pillars that we stand for as journalists. Okay, so in journalism, we follow rules. Okay, we do this to be accurate, to be consistent, to have authority as journalists that people can look up to and respect. Right? So we have these rules we follow. We write in third person. We get quotes from other people. We don't write in our own opinion because that's considered bias right there. We follow something called the SPJ Code of Ethics. So in the SPJ Code of Ethics, there's four main pillars that we stand for. The first one is seek truth and report it. The second one is minimizing harm. We're going to review that in a second. The third is act independently. And the fourth is be accountable and transparent. Okay. As far as minimizing harm, you might be kind of curious, what exactly does that mean? On the website, it says we need to balance the public's need for information against potential harm or discomfort. So it's a pursuit of the news. It's saying pursuit of the news is not a license for arrogance or undue intrusiveness. And I think how they phrased that was really interesting. Because we do want to minimize harm. We don't want to do something because we think it is fun to do it, right? We're doing something because we think it is the right thing to do. So it really is this balance that we have to act upon as journalists. And then the opposite of all that is Gonzo-style journalism. So during the time when Thompson was really kind of finding his voice, he helped to adopt this term, okay? It's a style described as contrarianism. So if we think of the word contrary, we're thinking of going against the norms. He was critiqued as a vagabond, a pioneer in journalism for his disregard, right? So going completely against the norm. We also have to keep in mind that gonzo is an interesting word. It is slang for the last man standing among binge drinkers. So if you're thinking about going out night on the town with all your friends, they all got really drunk, right? And you're still the last person there for some reason. That's really weird. Hun, you need to go home, okay? So it is slang for the last man standing. So the idea is that it's really just bizarre. Why are you writing in this way? He wrote Fear and Loathing. Now, this was his personal experience. It was published in the Rolling Stone about this drug culture of the late 60s. And if you see this movie poster on the right, this movie came out in 1998. He wrote Fear and Loathing quite a while before that. This movie poster really depicts some of the things that he is experiencing as he's driving to Las Vegas, as he's in Las Vegas. You see this warped neck here. Things are stretched and misplaced. There's bats or what looks like blots, maybe ink splotches in different places. He's got these bug eyes, right? Things are stretched in that. I was 4 years old when this movie came out. And when it did, I remember going to Blockbuster with my mom and seeing this poster and thinking that was so scary. And the reason why is because he had these massive bug eyes and it looked like these big like fly eyes, and it just kind of really freaked me out. So think about it like that way. It's a very bizarre way of writing. This next slide is a little intense, so bear with me. Okay. He did kill himself, okay? That is how he ended his life. He took a lot of drugs. He did a lot of things that were very reckless, right? In order to really try to achieve these insane emotions and really insane feelings about things. Now, that is not what anyone actually needs to do in order to achieve vulnerability. But that is what he chose to do. So he was struggling with a lot of different things. And so in 2005, he shot himself in the head, and he wrote this letter to his wife talking about just how he felt when he was kind of at the end of his time. So football season is over. No more games, no more bombs, no more walking, no more fun, no more swimming. 67, that is 17 years past 50. 17 more than I needed or wanted. Boring, I'm always bitchy. No fun for anybody. 67, you are getting greedy. At your age, relax. This won't hurt. So that's the last thing he wrote to his wife. It is intense. It is very intense. But if you look even at this writing right here and how vulnerable that is, it's very choppy, which in journalism we write that way anyways. But he is giving us his personal experience and being raw and just telling us how it is. No apologies, just telling us how he felt in that moment. So how exactly do we write Gonzo-style journalism? There's a phrase that I found when kind of doing some more research on this. It is autobiographical incidents with pure fiction. So you're talking about your experience, but you're going to be very narrative. You might be a little more exaggerated in the way that you write. So it's subjective journalism where you're going to put yourself in the story. You are the subject. You must share your experiences and your beliefs. And you can do this through different techniques. Thompson did it with a lot of humor and sarcasm. You don't always need to do it that way, though. You see in different parts of his writing, different stories that he's told, he also does it with exaggeration and metaphors. So think of it this way, that objective journalism is you are telling your audience, you're telling them the who, what, where, when, why, and how. But you're not showing them how it's done. You're not showing them who you are. With subjective journalism, you are showing and not telling. And that can be very, very hard to do. And then the biggest thing, biggest thing, and the reason why I think it's so important that we do this right now is that this is a commentary on our culture, okay? So we're going to take a look at his example. He wrote this piece. He was commissioned to write this piece So he and this guy named Ralph, who was an illustrator, went to the Kentucky Derby, spent about a week there, and wrote on the before, the during, and the after of the Kentucky Derby. The headline, the Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved. So this was actually something that was in the magazine. This poster right here was in the magazine. So we're going to just kind of take a look at how he's writing to get a feel of it. So thousands of raving, stumbling drunks getting angrier and angrier as they lose more and more money. By mid-afternoon, they'll be guzzling mint juleps with both hands and vomiting on each other between races. The whole place will be jammed with bodies, shoulder to shoulder. It's hard to move around. The aisles will be slick with vomit, people falling down and grabbing at your legs to keep from being stomped, drunks pissing on themselves in the betting lines, dropping handfuls of money and fighting to stoop over and pick it up. He is extremely narrative in this whole thing, talking about what he is experiencing, who is around him, all these experiences, but being very narrative and expressive in that writing. Okay, so we'll take a look at this because this is really that commentary on society, okay? Just as you are going to need to do, talking about what is going on right now in society. It was a face I'd seen 1,000 times at every derby I've ever been to. I saw it in my head as the mask of the whiskey gentry, a pretentious mix of booze, failed dreams, and a terminal identity crisis, the inevitable result of too much inbreeding and a closed and ignorant culture. One of the key genetic rules in breeding dogs, horses, or any other kind of thoroughbred is that close inbreeding tends to magnify the weak points in a bloodline as well as the strong points. In horse breeding, for instance, there is a definite risk in breeding two fast horses who are both a little crazy. The offspring will likely be very fast and also very crazy. So the trick in breeding thoroughbreds is to retain the good traits and filter out the bad. But the breeding of humans is not so wisely supervised, particularly in a narrow southern society, where the closest kind of inbreeding is not only stylish and acceptable, but far more convenient to the parents than setting their offspring free to find their own mates for their own reasons and in their own ways. So the biggest thing is that we understand that Thompson is going to the Kentucky Derby to watch a race of horses, things that we would consider animals, beasts. They don't understand us. They can't reason like us. We are humans. We are better. We are higher up in the chain of command. But yet, if you look at exactly what he's writing here, he's comparing the inbreeding of horses to the inbreeding of humans. So it is a commentary on our society and what is going on right now. And how can you show your reader that and not just tell them how you feel, but tell them how you feel and express it in a way that puts your reader into that situation and makes them agree with you on a completely another level. Because yes, they can say, I am sad too. But if you can share an experience together, your reader is going to be so much more immersed and taken with your piece than if you just tell them how you feel. So remember that you are the subject. That is extremely hard to do sometimes, but it's something we're about to take a look at. So this is something that he wrote. Every now and then, when your life gets complicated and the weasels start closing in, the only real cure is to load up on heinous chemicals and then drive like a bastard from Hollywood to Las Vegas, to relax as it were in the womb of the desert sun. Just roll the roof back and screw it on. Grease the face with white tanning butter and move out with the music at top volume, and at least a pint of other. So keep in mind, we're talking about your experiences and your life. So what is it like for you to do something? Okay. With this, let's keep in mind show and not telling. This is interesting. So here we go. The edge. There is no honest way to explain it because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. The others, the living, are those who pushed their control as far as they felt they could handle it and then pulled back or slowed down or did whatever they had to when it came time to choose between now and later. But the edge is still out there. So really what this is, you know, during these times, during this past month, when I've been stuck at home, I've been feeling lonely. I've been feeling anxious, depressed, upset, annoyed, right? I've had all these different feelings. Feelings that, yes, I have felt on a day-to-day basis, but they are within my routine and I can control them. The way that I'm feeling right now is almost being pushed to the edge. So here is where I can actually experience and feel what it's like to actually feel all these different emotions of loneliness and rage and anger and being upset, because he is putting me in an experience of how to feel that way. So again, do not tell me that you are sad or anxious or lonely, but how can you express that feeling in a way that your readers can feel it too? This was an interesting thought that kind of came in my head as I was kind of going through some of this research and everything. So as a journalist, we are taught to seek the truth, to really get both sides of the story, right? But we're never really taught to speak our own truth in journalism, because that is bias. And you can do that through other outlets. You can do that through poetry. You could do that through creative writing. But we don't see that in journalism because we don't consider it as journalism. But we still need to understand that even though our truth is biased, it is still our truth. It is still a truth. It still exists. It's probably undisclosed though. And we have to keep in mind that the truths that we have are what create foundations and values and belief systems. It's what we stand for. So keep in mind that even though your truth is bias, it's still journalism because it's still a truth. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up soon. All right, so the assignment that I'm giving y'all is really just perfect timing. Okay, this is the time to write in Gonzo-Style journalism, if there ever was a time, okay? You don't need to do what Hunter S. Thompson did. You don't need to go buy yourself a plane ticket somewhere and immerse yourself in a culture for a couple months and just live off the grid, right? You don't need to be driving in these biker gangs and living life on the edge, okay? We are all in a shared experience right now, and you just need to write how you feel. So this next slide I'm going to show you is hard for me to show you, but I'm going to show you it anyways. I'm going to read it to you. Vulnerability is the objective of this whole thing, is how can you be vulnerable in your writing? And this is me being vulnerable. And it was hard. It was so hard writing this piece. But just kind of keep in mind that I'm trying to get my readers interested, or not interested, but trying to get my readers to see how my anxiety feels to me during this time, and kind of how I'm connecting with my mom, and in good and in bad ways, because I'm also reflecting on my life and how she lived her life. You'll see that at the end of the piece. What another wonderful morning, waking up from an insomnia-ridden night to once again not do anything today. Okay, just make a list. Make a list of 5 things you can control today. That's actually what I told myself this morning as I began the repeated TED Talk on how to not be anxious during a pandemic I give myself every morning. Usually I begin the talk with an antiquated hello to all my organs, apologizing for all the raw cookie dough I consumed last night as I look at my belly. And then I repeat the mantra of control your environment, control your environment, control your environment. So I make a list of 5 things I can control today and feel completely burdened by the fact that I actually might have to complete this list in order to feel accepted by nobody but myself. F anxiety. Like really. I always play a game. Let's call it the anxious game. For about 20 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. Just what Pat Sajak prescribed. It's a fun reel of what ifs, ranging from what if the fat content in this is actually doubled what the nutrition label says, to what if I can't afford to see my dad this summer because I won't be teaching summer school? So yeah, it's real fun. You know what helps me remove those thoughts? It's so stupid, but maybe you have to know a person that died in front of your eyes to feel it. I look up in the sky, only on bright, beautiful days where I can see clouds, and I talk to my mom. I see her face in clouds, and she winks at me to say, "You got this." And I believe her. After reading about everything Thompson did to escape reality, I imagine being drugged up in a van on my way to Las Vegas could be one way to escape anxiety. But clouds and the sun beating on your face as you stare up into the sky like a bird about to take flight into another dimension is what does it for me. Is that futile and idiotic? Most likely, but so is drowning yourself in alcohol every night so you don't have to confront your hatred to everyone, including yourself. So kind of keep in mind that that last portion was about my mom, but it's very vulnerable. It's only personal to me, right? That's the whole point of Gonzo-Style journalism. It is you. It is your perspective. It's how you're feeling. It doesn't matter how anyone else is feeling. It's how you are feeling, okay? So let's talk a little bit about alt copy. So we didn't see it a lot in the yearbook this year, and that's okay. But alt copy kind of looks like this, right? We've got this, if we're looking at the layout of this right here, we've got these tall ships. This is something called the Tall Ship Festival. It's in Erie, Pennsylvania. This was the main story, broken up in a bunch of different chunks, talking about the different ships. They told me I had to include every ship, so it took a while. But this is alt copy. You can see it's sectioned off, different color, white background, different font than that font. And that's also a listicle as well. So it lists 5 things that you can do. One of them is seeing this giant rubber duck on the lake swimming. So there's a bunch of different things that you could do instead. So alt copy does not have to be Gonzo-Style journalism. You and your assignment is Gonzo-Style journalism as alt copy. Just keep in mind that alt copy can be anything. It needs to supplement your main story in some kind of way. So if you also take a look at this spread, this is the main story right here. This is alt copy, Friday night's lineup. So other things that you could see on what's going on, whatever, on that Friday night. Other things to see as well, and then it says more 90s nostalgia, so I guess probably some other things you could have done as well. This was our main story right here, and we had 3 different pieces of alt copy to help supplement this right here. So your assignment, using the resources provided, I'm going to give you his PDF. I found a PDF of Fear and Loathing. I found a PDF of the Kentucky Derby piece, SPJ Code of Ethics, and I'm also including a link to a story from Newsweek about Johnny Depp and his experience with Hunter S. Thompson. So I think that's kind of interesting. So with those resources, and then also, of course, with this lesson, what you've kind of seen with how to write in Gonzo-Style journalism, I want you to write a 200 to 300 word alt copy piece describing your personal experience in this pandemic. So that's what it needs to be about. Now, it can be anything, right? You don't have to actually say the word pandemic in your experience, but you need to put your reader in these situations of how you feel, okay? So kind of ask yourself, what are you feeling? What do those feelings resemble or look like? Remember to show, not tell, and that can be really hard. The piece that I wrote, it's not perfect by any means, and it's not super close to Gonzo-Style journalism. It's as close as I could get, but it's my truth, right? So that's really what I want you guys to go for, is how can you write your truth? How can you be vulnerable? A good way to start practicing this is by journaling every 2 to 3 days, and then put all of those feelings and all of those things together, and then how can you put your reader into that. All spelling, grammar, AP style will need to be included and correct as well. And then the last thing I want to show you is that this is one piece in your final project, okay? Your final is going to be the entire reflection spread. So you will include this alt copy piece of Gonzo-Style journalism. You're going to include your main story. You're going to interview people and do transcripts of your interview. You're going to have 5 photos, and then you're actually going to put this all together in a spread that you will create with Photopea. We'll have that lesson later. All right, thanks guys. Goodbye.